Hello, and welcome to another episode of Season 2, where we cover IELTS tips and tricks. And we actually play out a full IELTS exam. We still have Sina at the back, making sure we do a good job. Sam on my right, who is from Fast Track ESL, his own YouTube channel, so feel free to check that out sometime. And Sam?
No, thank you very much for having me again.
No problem.
I'm going to play the role of the examiner. And whenever you're ready.
All right. So I'm going to be a student, but as a native English speaker, you're going to get like a few natural native English speaking slip-ups. They're not really slip-ups, but just to help you out. Student, examiner, I'm ready.
Yes. Okay. We'll comment on those later.
Yes.
Beautiful.
So I'm going to skip the warm-up, and I'm going to start with the first part of the speaking test.
Action.
Yes.
Okay. So, Sarah.
Yes.
In this first part, I'd like to ask you a few questions about yourself.
Okay.
Let's talk about technology and education. Are you content to be the age you are right now?
I am very content with my age right now because I'm not so young that I'm making many mistakes in my life, but not so old to say that I can't stop growing professionally and in terms of my career.
Interesting. How much did you think about your future goals as a child?
Oh, actually for me, my future goals as a child was quite up there. I used to talk my mom's ear off about like whether I should pursue certain subjects in high school or what majors I should pursue in university. So it started young.
Now, how much have you changed in the last 5 years?
Ooh, I would say I've changed a lot. In terms of my career, no, I've continued to be a teacher. But on a personal level and in terms of health, I would say I have continuously grown.
That's great to hear. Now, what changes do you see happening in your life in the future?
Well, I would like to get married someday, sooner than later. Where I'm living is constantly changing, so I may not be where I am now. I may want to travel and teach again. So I see myself in a different country, for sure. And my marital status might have changed.
All right. Okay. Now, in this part of the test, I'm going to give you a card. On this card, there's some questions. I'd like you to think about these questions for 1 minute.
Okay.
And then I'm going to ask you to talk about it for 2 minutes.
Okay.
I want you to describe a time when you used a piece of new technology.
Okay.
And here's a pad for you to take notes.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm supposed to write about a time I used a new piece of technology. I am going to say, without dating myself, a smartphone. Okay, so what was the device? A smartphone. Why you started using it? It had more features. It looked better. Maybe I can say better physical appearance, because that's, I think, better vocabulary. What level of the difficulty was? Not difficult at all. Maybe I want to say user-friendly, because that's a pretty good word to use. How helpful it was. Very, if not too helpful. Yeah, I think that's good. Anything else? Nope.
Okay, so that's 1 minute.
Okay.
Now, please continue speaking until I tell you to stop, and don't worry if I stop you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, the piece of new technology I'm going to talk about is a smartphone. I didn't just start using this piece of technology, but a while ago. Why I started using it was because actually my friends were guilting me and shaming me into using it. Of course, we had flip phones before, you know. But now that's kind of ancient, and so that's why I started using the smartphone. The level of difficulty, I would say, was very low because it's very user-friendly. The features, they just look better. The aesthetic of the phone is much better. And how helpful is it? It's very helpful. As you know, a lot of companies are making smartphones even more user-friendly these days. And I'm starting to think that maybe it's a little too helpful. And as a result, humans in general are overusing programs. I want to drop a few names here, but maybe I shouldn't. But just a lot of social media platforms can tend to waste our time. It may shame us if we see people who have better lives, or you see them in other parts of the world, or they're wearing like really good makeup. You might start to compare yourself to them, and I think there's actually an expression for it, which is not coming to my mind right now. But these things can be detrimental to an individual's self-esteem. So in that way, it is new technology. It's always improving, but I would say I wouldn't encourage the overuse of smartphones. As pretty as they may be and as new as they may be, we need to kind of take control and decide for ourselves.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, in this third part,
yes,
I'd like to ask you a few more general questions about the topic.
Okie dokie.
Now, you talked about smartphones.
Yes, I did.
When do you think children should start using computers?
Well, I know for a fact that children are starting to use computers at a very young age now. In fact, I think it's too young. I know the necessity of using computers is alive and well, but if I was a parent, I would discourage the use of it until the age of, say, 9 or 10. So they've been in school, they've been in the classroom setting, but they should also kind of depend or rely on their teacher as their main source of information.
Are schools helping children learn with enough technology in the classroom?
To go against the response, what I said before, I would say that they are using technology enough, which still might bode well with my first answer, actually. They're using enough to increase engagement of the students, to provide some, fun and relaxing ways to learn with visuals. So I think that's good. I would probably say that some teachers might overuse it, and some teachers may underuse it. So it's very good to strike a balance between teacher time and computer time.
Great. Now, what are your thoughts on computers replacing teachers in the future? Do you think that's ever going to happen?
For human children, in the future, I would say computers will not replace teachers, because you still need that kind of interactive engagement between student and teacher. If it's just a computer, I'm pretty sure there will be times where the students can slack off, or they could stop paying attention, they could feel sleepy because they don't have someone to kind of discipline them and say, hey, let's stay on task, pay attention, and then the teacher can say or notice if the student is actually learning or if they're just listening.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. This is the end of the IELTS speaking test.
Wow.
Awesome.
And
scene.
All right.
Very nice, very nice.
All
Guys,
right.
I just want to comment on something. Our students, our viewers might be looking at you taking notes,
Yeah.
right? I just want to mention that the examiner would not do that, right? This is just for the purpose of this educational video that
Right.
we're doing.
Oh, for sure.
Sam is taking notes so that he can, comment on Sarah's performance, but in the actual IELTS test,
Yeah.
the examiner will not be taking notes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
To add to that, the examiner will not be taking notes, but will be occasionally writing down certain numbers in the rubrics that they have.
Yes.
And that is something you should not be focused on.
Yes, don't do
That's
that.
a very big mistake. I've seen students staring at that piece of paper and seeing a 5 would make them lose their composure.
Confidence and
Well,
composure.
actually,
Yeah.
the examiner's responsibility is to kind of hide that
That's right.
information. So
That's right.
don't even try, because
Yeah.
if you're focusing on that and they know, then
Yeah.
they're gonna put their focus on hiding it.
Exactly.
So you don't want to confuse the examiner
Right.
in that
Yes,
way.
and that cat and mouse game, right? You don't want to get
Exactly.
caught in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but I've seen students do that, and as soon as they see a number they don't like, they're like,
Oh.
oh no, am I going to get a 5? Oh, this is... And I've had students tell me about this experience after the fact. So the examiner's trying their best. I mean, they're doing their best not to reveal anything.
Yeah.
But sometimes students sneak a peek, and yeah, so not a good
Yeah.
idea. And those numbers do not represent the score that you're going to get.
Right.
So the score will be calculated later and will
Yeah.
all be put together.
And by the way, the score that your examiner gives you is not exactly the final
True.
say. It
Yes.
actually goes through a few rounds where different people, they listen to you and they have to kind of agree with the score. So if you think that you've been treated or scored unfairly by the actual examiner in front of you, it's not necessarily going to be the final result, because
Yes.
it's tested against different people's expertise.
Great note.
Great. So I have a few notes
Oh,
here
yes.
to share with you. Well, I'd like to start by saying I'm not going to comment on the grammatical range and accuracy and the lexical resource. Obviously, Sarah is a native speaker, and I'm sure that Sina will be putting up a lot of the words, expressions, and collocations that she used in her response. I'll be mostly focusing on your performance and how you approached the different questions.
Okay?
Now, for question 1, when I asked you, are you content with the age that you are right now? You gave a very developed and complex response. So it wasn't a definitive yes or no. I would recommend that students go with a more definitive and watered down response.
Whoops.
Especially
Whoopsies!
yeah, no. I mean, for
Okay.
you, it was very comfortable. You were very easy expressing yourself.
Yeah.
But I can easily see how students could fall into a trap where they have this
I
idea, but because of their level of proficiency, and they're only aiming, say, for a 7, but then expressing that thought might be too complex.
Yes,
it might be
I
too, it
understand.
might draw on more complex vocabulary which they might not have in their repertoire.
Yes.
So pick a
So-
side and stick to it.
That's right. That's
I
what I
might
would
even
recommend.
say know your limit and stay within it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Don't overshoot.
Are you rhyming again? Dr.
Again.
Sis?
No!
We specifically told her not to. But
It's an actual saying.
okay. Moving on to part 2.
Yes.
Now I noticed that one of the things Sarah did is she wrote a full sentence
Right.
Oh.
as a comment, which you're not supposed
How
to do.
dare
so.
you look at my notes?
Those are private.
So the
Okay.
examiner will take your notes away at the end of the test and will specifically look for complete sentences. And the reason why you're not allowed to write complete sentences is because some people will use that 1 minute to write things down and then read off of the page, as
Oh.
opposed to speaking naturally, spontaneously, and showing their true level of fluency.
Right.
So
It's also time consuming to do that.
it could
That's
be, yeah.
true.
That's not a good idea. So it had more features, which is a
Okay.
complete
Okay.
sentence. Right.
I don't even know what a complete sentence is anymore. Whoa. I'm learning new things about myself. Okay.
All right. So part 3. Now, in part 3, with some of the questions I asked you, you started with a short background. So I asked you, when
I
do
am
you
a storyteller.
That's what you do. That's what comes naturally to you. So, when do you think children should start using computers? And you started with a little bit of background, and then you said, but they should start at the age of, right? I would recommend the viewers at home to start with the age and then proceed to giving the background and the reasons. So
Right.
always, I think we mentioned this in a previous episode. In part 3, give a definitive answer that clearly expresses your opinion at the very beginning of your response and then proceed to elaborate.
Yeah, that's more
Serve the
clear.
main dish first, dessert
Yes.
comes after.
Exactly.
And it's more structural too.
Right.
But of course, I did that on purpose. So we could.
I don't know how to feel about that. All right. Now, Sarah asked for clarification in part 3. So
Yes,
for one of
I
the
did.
questions, the examiners sometimes do this when they're reading a question off of the page. They don't sound too natural sometimes. Especially in part 3, asking for clarification
Yep.
is allowed.
Sam, could you give us a couple of examples? Like, what would be the best question to ask for clarification or repetition?
That's a very good question. So you could go with, well, sometimes students feign not
Ignorance?
being
Oh.
able to hear. So it's like, oh, I'm sorry, pardon me, or
Yeah.
excuse me, could you please repeat that?
Yeah.
These are things that you could say.
Yep.
I wouldn't recommend phrases like, could you please paraphrase or rephrase your question? I would say something that's more natural.
Yeah,
like,
could you say that again?
exactly.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. One more time, please.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is totally fine, and you're allowed to say that.
But don't sing it like one more time.
Also, don't go, huh?
I'm getting a little old in this air.
But in some of the answers, I loved how with the question when I asked you, what are your thoughts on computers replacing teachers? You started off by saying computers will not replace teachers in the
Yes,
future.
so
That was very
definitive,
definitive, very
yeah.
clear at the outset, and that was amazing.
Good. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
For the score, do you think I should score, Sarah?
Sure.
Can we like, I know that IELTS is out of 9. Can I give her a 10 maybe?
Let's do it. Let's do it. For this episode, she gets a 10. All right.
The first ever Ben
Thank you.
10
In history.
Okay.
You mean class clown series?
Yes, CCS history.
Right.
All right, guys, I want to make it very clear to all of you out there. There are words that you've seen on the screen throughout this episode, and just like other episodes before it, you can always look down to the description box, and we've written out the word, the pronunciation, and the definition. So go there for reference.
How about the CC button, Sarah?
Oh! Closed captions, yes. So if you didn't see a word that you heard, right, click on the closed captions and you'll be able to see everything that we say as clear as the light of day.
Awesome. Yes.
Bye, everyone, and stay tuned for yet another episode with me and Sam and Sina.
Hey, that's a wrap.
Bye-bye.